Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens, the screenwriting step-by-step project, episode 206. 206 of these. My name is Glenn Gers, and I come to you every Monday through Friday, if I can make it, at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time Zone, to let you look over my shoulder, share my screen as I write a script. I do this in order to demystify the screenwriting process, because I think there's a lot of great teaching out there telling you how to make a great script and all the deep meanings of script structure, but very few seem to talk about the actual day-to-day, line-by-line process of writing it, getting your ideas into an outline, thinking in scenes, getting those scenes into some rough, messy draft, and then thinking about that and making rewrites. That process is the same, at least in my experience, for every type of script. I'm working on a TV pilot in this thing, but it could be a feature, it could be a web series, it doesn't matter, it's a script. And scripts are made in scenes in a certain form with a certain kind of language. And all I'm trying to show you is a process to get your ideas into script form and not freak out and think, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. It's really just a mechanical process that you have to do day by day, step by step. So I thought I'd let you look over my shoulder while I do it, while I walk through it, in case you can pick up some helpful tips. That's all this is. This is not going to be the great screenwriting theory. If you want my thoughts on screenwriting in more detail, in 10-minute lessons, I've got them here on my channel. The first 3 playlists are especially helpful. Little 10-minute videos in which I try to break down topics that I think every screenwriter ought to know. Screenwriting Essentials, Screenwriting Tools, Skills, and Craft, the process, being a writer. And I talk about different things, like taking small steps, like writing flashbacks, like thinking in scenes or working with dramatic action. And then the subject of the video is the name and the thumbnail. You really can't miss it. So therefore, I urge you to check that out if you want to understand my approach to screenwriting. This is just a time for me to let you watch me do it in case that helps you. If it doesn't seem to work for you, don't do it. This is not the only way to do it. Everyone has to work out their own way to write. Every artist has to make their own path. If there's one thing I can teach you, it's that. You've got to figure out your way that's productive and healthy for you. Take little bits from everybody. Watch all the teachers you can. Steal every trick in the book. Get yourself a great big toolbox of ways to approach it, because you will always run into problems, and it's really great to think, oh, maybe I can try doing this. That's what this is. You do not have to watch these in order. There is no meaning to the order. There is not some story here. I'm just letting you watch me work and talking about the process of working. Oh, hi, Division 5. Hi, Jean. Hello, Sarah. Greetings to you. Hello, Thumper. Good to see you all here. Happy Monday for those of you who are watching live. Hello, Orfe. And we are going to just get right into it, because I am now rewriting. I did an outline. The first few months of this was outlining, and then I took that outline and I wrote a rough, very rough draft. That took another couple months, and now I have been doing rewrites, trying to make those scenes sharp and dramatic and figure out what they're all about. Very often, even after all the outlining and planning, you don't really know what something's about until you've written it and read it. Read it. Okay. Hello, Donna. Good morning in Australia. Hello, Elaret. So yeah, let's get to work, because that is what this is all about. Boom. We are starting back in the first scene, which I never figured out. I had too many things going on, and now I have got the first. This first bit is right. It's okay. It's doing all right. Hello, Rachel Waring. So now I'm going to get the rest of this speech into some shape. So we've got Tavana saying good evening, and Donna saying good morning because one of them's in Australia and one of them's in Sweden? Norway. So welcome to the entire globe. I am so glad to have you here. Okay, so I left this little so far so good so I could say that's where we stopped. This part I've got. Although I'm just going to cut a little more than I noticed. Began to spin. He was frightened, couldn't focus. Okay, he was frightened, fully aware that something was buzzing, pins and needles, the room's trying to descend. He couldn't focus or feel. Murray was frightened. He was frightened, fully aware. I don't like doing the he was, he couldn't, he was. But, well, let's read it out loud. What's the page count? Alas, we are back up to 70. I will have to cut 10, but I believe I can do it. I can at least get it down to like 64. You know, if I get down to like 63, 64, not a big deal. I can live with that. Technically, I don't know. I mean, different companies are different. And so somebody will say, yeah, you really need to get it down to like 50 because of, you know, commercial breaks and stuff. I'm just going to do the best I can because you know what? This is just a teaching script. It's just for teaching. If I can't quite make it exactly what I think the business wants, oh well. All right. The first thing Murray Simpson felt when the poison entered his bloodstream was his tongue thickening, his throat going numb. Buzzing, pins and needles, the room began to spin. He couldn't focus or feel. He was frightened, fully aware that something insidious was creeping into his nerve endings. But he was unable to speak or move, couldn't focus or feel. That's what couldn't focus or feel. His paralyzed lungs had already stopped getting oxygen to his brain. He would be victim number 10. Okay, so he would be victim number 10. He would become victim number 10. The chemistry, said Keller, had broken in days or maybe weeks before, and laced a jar of mustard in Simpson's kitchen with a unique mixture of plant toxins. No. I'm just trying to straighten out this speech. I'm actually really interested to see what gets cut when page counts get desperate. That is interesting. I'm not going to really get that desperate because I don't have to. And I do want to end up. The other thing is that, remember, when you're writing what is essentially a show script, a script that is trying to hook people, it's better to get it to be really great if it's not outrageously over length. If you need another page or two to get it to be what you consider the best possible version, remember, it's going to go through changes. Everything goes through changes. And so the answer is you do the best you can, but yeah, I mean, honestly, the way to, this is the thing, like saving nickels and dimes won't matter if you've got $1,000 scene somewhere. When it comes down to it, you got to start cutting scenes. Also because, you cut a little bit and you get like on the, you change the page number, but it's really not that different. Sometimes you have to actually cut whole actions or scenes. That's really where you make the big cuts. Okay, so let's see. He was frightened, fully aware that something insidious was creeping into his nerves, but he was already unable to speak. Couldn't focus or feel. His paralyzed lungs no longer getting oxygen to his brain. Okay, so what I'm looking at here is the chemistry set killer had broken. This is coherent. This now is entirely focused on one subject, which is the experience of Murray dying, being poisoned. Cool. Now we need to change subjects. So the question is, it could be victim number 10. No, wait, it had broken in. As he had nine times before. Okay, the dates, yeah. Oops. Okay, the chemistry set killer had broken in as he had 9 times before and laced a jar and laced. Hello, Kirby. I don't want to say laced a jar of mustard because he didn't do that 9 times before. It's the mustard. Yes, exactly, Sarah. You can't edit something that you haven't written yet. As much as you think you can get it right before you write, you can't. You can get an idea of what you think is important before you write. You can say, the point of this is to introduce the concept of George hunting the chemistry set killer. I know what this scene is about, but exactly how I'm going to get it, you got to try different things. Trial and error, see. 9 times before. How about this? Boom, bo. Okay, the chemistry set killer had broken in as he had 9 times before in different states with victims of different ages, races. Okay, the chemistry set killer had broken in as he had 9 times before in different states with victims of different ages, races, economic and social groups. The poison itself was all the murderers had in common. a unique mixture of a unique homemade mixture of plant toxins, his signature. Hello, Jose. Very nice to see you. Thank you for coming. A handwritten script. There we go. He's reading from a handwritten script, but he knows it so well he often looks off into the dark, feeling it. I'd broken in days. And planted not planted, and hello, Natasha. Yes, it's I don't know. I kind of like it. I love a good dialogue scene or speech. But this is actually pretty show-offy. This is like saying we're going to start with a monologue. But having come from theater, when I started writing, I loved plays as well, and books as well as movies. And one of the things that happened was it was the 1970s. There was no way to make films as a 15 or 16-year-old. So I ended up doing school plays, and I got very into theater. So the idea of a speech, it does not scare me as much as it might some. No, secreted, it's not that, but thank you. It's where. See, if I say he put it in a specific thing, which I love to do, like, oh, he had broken in and put this poison in the ketchup or something, I don't want to say it's always in the same place, because then everyone would stop eating ketchup. The whole point is, injected a unique mixture of plant toxins into Murray's food, as he had 9 times before. Had injected. I'm going to say injected. In other words, like he into Murray's unique mixture of plant toxins into something Murray ate. Into something Murray ate. Into Murray's. See, this is the problem. Had broken in and injected a unique mixture of plant. No. And poisoned. Okay, so the question is, and this is this is one of the things that you got to get used to, guys, when you're learning to write. You can spend all day on one freaking paragraph. That happens, especially if it's a important early or hard one. Early ones, partly because you don't have the language down, and also because it is important to get your language really good in the first couple of pages to make it read really well, because people do turn off if they're just having a hard time reading. So I'm just trying to get this to be very, very readable. Days or even weeks had broken in days or even weeks before. Okay, the chemistry set killer had broken in days or even weeks before. As he had 9 times. Oh, but 9 times before. Earlier. As he had 9 times before in different states. With victims of different ages, races. As he had, okay, the chemistry set killer had broken in days or even weeks earlier, as he had 9 times before, in different states, with victims of different ages, races, economic and social groups. The poison itself was the only thing. The poison itself was all the murders had in common. A unique mixture of plant toxins. His signature. That's not bad. Periods go inside the quotation marks. Okay, look at that. Okay, look, we've got another paragraph. Okay. The chemistry set killer had broken in days or even weeks earlier, as he had 9 times before, in different states with victims of different ages, races, economic and social groups. The poison itself was all the murders had in common. A unique mixture of plant toxins, his signature. I was 9 years old when Marie. I was 9 years old. I was 9 years old. That's it. It was all over the news. People were panicked. Everyone was suddenly afraid of their own. Where would he strike? My first serial killer. The first time. The CSK killed 10, struck 10 times. Killer. Struck 10 times. Struck 10 times and then just stopped. Vanished. All right, look at that. We've got a page. We've got one good page. You know what? This is not right. There we go. See? See? This is good. That's good. That's good. You see? CSK struck 10 times and then stopped, and then just stopped, vanished in 1985. Now it's a cold case. No one cares. No one is listening to this podcast. I know that. 10 of them are people. Are from, shout out, are from the Crime Crackers web sleuth community forums. Shout out to the crackers. Shout out to the Crackers web sleuth forums. Shout out. I'm trying to get the crackers, the crime crackers, that's the title, and I'm just putting it right there in the dialogue on page 2. Shout out to you, to the crackers. 5 weeks. In 5 weeks. 5 more episodes until 5 more episodes until I reveal episodes. And then I reveal new evidence identifying spread your word, kids. Spread the word, kids. Tell your friends. We're going to get him. I want him to be a little more casual, so that's the shout out and the... Okay, interesting. I believe this isn't bad. Okay, so, all right, we have got the first page in coherent shape, okay? Now it's a story. He's telling us a story. He's starting with this incident, and then he's stepping out to talk about who done it, and then he's saying his personal connection, and then he's saying what he's doing right now. Cool. Okay. With a grinding noise, a garage door opener lifts one entire wall, revealing that the studio is, in fact, George's Chevy. Wall of the studio? That it is, in fact. There we go. With a grinding noise, a garage door opener. Garage door opener lifts one entire wall of the studio, revealing that it is in fact George's shabby two-car garage. Just getting rid of some words. Just a few word tweaks. All right. Do I need stretches and twists back? That's the question. Look at that. I got rid of words. That is the name of the game. How do you know your audience is not getting bored? Well, that's a good question. We never really know. The important thing to remember is that the audience doesn't exist. There are different people, and some of them are going to get bored, and some of them are not. That's the most important thing to remember, is that you're going to, and the question is, do you think it's boring? Like, I'm working on this until I can get into it. Now, the problem is with all writers, when you are rewriting and rewriting and rewriting something, you just stop feeling it. You don't get it. You have to step away. But when you step away and you come back to it and you read through a scene, it should feel like you're getting drawn into it. It should feel like you're going to enjoy it and that you're getting somewhere. If you are not bored, that's the first test. That's the only thing you really can do. Is this pushing it? There are some people who would say, you can't do this, it's boring. I kind of think it's not, because I like it. I would enjoy it as an audience. The best way to tell if you think the audience is going to be bored is if you are having a hard time reading it. But we all have a hard time reading our own work, so you have to put it aside, work on other things, and then come back to it. That's the only way I know. The question really, how do you know your audience is not getting bored, is essentially, how do you know you're a good writer? And the answer is, you don't. You just try. You try and be the best writer you can be. And then, actually, I'm going to... I'm just writing this down. Bored. Here's the thing. You're talking specifically about this gigantic monologue. And the answer is, I have A, a taste for that, but B, enough experience to feel confident that it's not outrageous. It's pushing it, it's showy, but you want to be a little showy in your opening scene, okay? You want to suggest that there's a style and something interesting and kind of like whatever. Like sometimes the style will be not explaining things. I just watched Outer Range, and the whole opening 20 minutes of that is almost no dialogue at all, and a lot of things that you're like, what's going on? But that's the style. They're saying, we're going to hook you in and then explain it. In this case, I believe that a good speech in a dark room can be hooky, and I've written enough speeches to feel good about it. But also, I just like speech. I've seen enough speeches. The next thing is, I check it. I test it. I will test it with different people. But especially, I test it with myself. Like right now, I'm going to read this scene out loud. I'm not going to read the stage direction. I'm just going to read this monologue that Jose, you're worried about. And I don't mean that. I mean, like, that's a legitimate question. So here's one of the things I would do. The first thing Murray Simpson felt when the poison entered his bloodstream was his tongue thickening, his throat going numb. Buzzing, pins and needle, the room began to spin. He was frightened, fully aware that something insidious was creeping into his nerve endings, but he was already unable to speak or move or speak. Couldn't focus or feel, his paralyzed lungs no longer getting oxygen to his brain. The chemistry set killer had broken in days or even weeks earlier, as he had 9 times before in different states with victims of different ages, races, economic and social groups. The poison itself was all the murders had in common, a unique mixture of plant toxins, his signature. I was 9 years old. It was all over the news. People were panicked. Everyone was suddenly afraid of their own pantries and refrigerators. My first serial killer. The first time I became aware of human evil. The CSK struck 10 times that summer. And then just stopped, vanished in 1985. Now it's a cold case. No one cares. No one is listening to this podcast. I know that. I have 14 subscribers, and 10 of them are from the Crime Cracker web forums. Shout out to the crackers. But that's all going to change in 5 weeks. 5 more episodes, and then I will reveal new evidence identifying the chemistry set killer. Spread the word, kids. Tell your friends. We're going to get him. So I think that there's this long story that he's telling. I'm still tinkering with some of it. Only thing was the only thing. Was the only thing they had in common. The poison itself was the only thing they had in common. Okay, so that's my answer. Is I've read through that, and as you can see, I'm just still tweaking it, but I feel confident that it's not a terrible speech. It goes somewhere. Okay, this was when you read it out loud, sometimes you stumble. You're like, oh wait, the logic didn't follow here. For instance, I just changed it. So it says, now it's a cold case. No one cares. I have 14 subscribers, and 10 of them are from the Crime Crackers web sleuth forums. Shout out to the crackers. No one is listening to this podcast. I know that. But that's all going to change. Yeah, okay, so here's the thing. So I feel okay with that. Is that, do you mean, is that a dramatic question? Yeah, it's a good question. That's why I'm spending so much time on it, because I want to really explain my thinking. My feeling is you often want to open with something showy. And in this case, what's showy is a monologue. And it's a good story. I feel like it's a good story. It starts with a murder, and then it becomes personal, and then he says something's going to happen. Hang on a second. Natasha's saying the beginning of Michael Clayton was a long speech, but not boring. Just saying. Yeah, that's true. But if you'll notice, the beginning of Michael Clayton, which has several great speeches in it, but the beginning of Michael Clayton is very tricky because the long speech is voiceover when you're watching a lot of other stuff happen. And he did that deliberately. That wasn't just watching somebody give that speech. That was this speech going on that you actually have to have a hard time following, because you're also watching all these lawyers pushing carts around and handing papers and doing things. And the credits, it's like a lot going on. To cover for the fact that is one of the biggest speeches in the history of motion pictures. That's a huge speech, but it's great. It's a great speech. Anyway, so that's, yeah. The answer is, will somebody down the line in the course of production, some producer or executive say, you can't have a big speech like that? And I say, okay, well, we'll talk about it. First of all, you can always trick it. It's like the walk and talk. You can say, well, what if there's a board on his wall with lots of pictures and things that you can cut to and show, like all the victims' faces and stuff? And they'll be like, oh, okay, that'll be fine. People are suckers. How much can actors do to lift your dialogue? You mean like lift it from its badness? The answer is not that much. If your dialogue is really bad, actors cannot save you. Actors count on you to write good dialogue. If you write good dialogue, they will lift it into the stratosphere. Are you still firmly convinced there's no chance this sees the light of day? Yes, and I'll tell you why. One reason is I'm not going to do anything with it. So unless some like Netflix executive wanders into this live stream, and says, "Oh my God, I love this story. Call Glenn Gers, and we're going to tell him we got a deal." Because the reason, by the way, the reason that I am so convinced that there's no chance for this to be made is because it's a pilot. If it was an indie film, if it was a low budget feature, you can always make one of those. I know how to. Not everyone can always make them, but they can usually be made. The reason that this I don't feel confident is because you're not committing just to making the pilot. You're committing to a series, which is a huge financial and spiritual commitment on the part of a company. So therefore, you got to fight. This is actually kind of important. You always have to fight to get your art made. Even the most beloved work, somebody's like, everybody wants to make this movie, they still have to fight to get it made. Even when you're big and powerful, you have to fight to get every project made because there are too many people who want to make too many projects, and the game is highly competitive. Okay? Hollywood is not just about doing good work, it's about winning the money, winning the attention. And therefore, the companies, they want the winning. They honestly, if they could win with something terrible, they're fine with that. So the answer is even the most beloved script still requires fighting to get it made. I'm not going to fight to get this made because I only did it for this purpose. So somebody else would have to take on that fight. The stories of how hard it is to get something made are endless. And that's for stuff that, like I said, even the big players, of which I am not. I never was. I was a working writer in the business, but I was never powerful in any way. So that's the answer. The answer is if Netflix calls and says, "Hey, we want to do this," I'm on it. I would jump on that. Sure, absolutely. But I'm pretty firmly convinced because I know that without me actually actively pushing it, it's unlikely to happen, and I know I'm not going to do that. So that's why. Oh gosh, let's ban this person. They're disrupting my industry. Okay. Well, don't worry. Just explain because this is a question. Like when you say, "How much can actors do to lift your dialogue?" I assumed you meant like lift it above its not goodness, and I don't mean that like I was insulted. I mean like we all think that. Oh, the actor will make it work, and that's not an insult. That's just we all hope that'll happen. I have found that the more that your dialogue is dramatic action, the more that you actually feel like there is a story being told, an instruction being given, a question being asked, a revelation being made, the more that there's a purpose to the dialogue, the more actors can do with it. How do you become powerful in the industry? You do something that makes a lot of money. It's just that simple. The answer is the people who are powerful in the industry are the ones who have had a hit. That's simple. If you've had a hit, you are momentarily powerful. If you've had a lot of hits, you are momentarily powerful for a while. Power is constantly being struggled for in the industry, and power really relates to money. the people who are powerful in the industry are the ones, like if you are an executive, if you have been associated with hit movies, you are more likely to move up in the chain. If you have been associated with a whole lot of flops, you ain't going to be gaining more power. The director who has had a big hit financially has more ability to say, trust me, I want to do this, than the person who has not. Any tips for figuring out the second act of a story? Hold on, let me just do, yes, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, and seriously, Thumper, I was cool with the question. I thought it was a good question. Yeah. Any tips for figuring out the second act of a story? I know how the story starts and ends, but I find myself struggling to figure out the middle act. I'm going to refer you to the 6 essential questions video. That actually is my best answer. The middle section of those questions. The questions are, hang on. 6 questions are, boom, boom, boom. Okay, so what is it about? Who is it about? What do they want? Why can't they get it? What do they do about that? Why doesn't that work? Okay, why can't they get it? What do they do about it? Why doesn't that work? Which I explain in detail in the video, are sort of a cycle that you run through several times in your second act. And I urge you to watch that video because I explained it better than I will here. But basically the point is the story begins with someone wanting to do something. Okay, they have something they want and therefore they take an action to get it. That's what the story is about, almost always. But there's an obstacle. There's something that makes it hard, because if there wasn't an obstacle, if it wasn't hard to do, then when they try to do it, they would succeed in doing it and the story would be over. So there's that's sort of like easy rationale. But what I mean is, give them some reason that it's hard, because otherwise you'll find yourself with a 5-minute story. Think, what is it that's making your story hard? That's going to be what the second act is about. Because usually, whatever that hard thing is, they'll try and do something about it. And whatever they do, it tends to either not work. So they learn, oh, what I thought was the situation, or what I thought was my abilities, I don't have, or it is not the way it is. Or often, the thing they do actually makes it worse. Or puts them further away, or puts a new obstacle in their path. So that there tend to be a series of that, of, I wanted to do this thing, so I took this action, but that dropped this whole other thing in my way. Now I have to take on that to get to the other one, to get to that. And so you tend to find yourself learning and changing and strategizing in the second act. And then what happens is eventually you get to the hardest thing. And that's the third act. That's really my best answer for how to figure out the second act of the story. There's all sorts of rules that people come up with for the second act has to have this happen or this happen. I don't think that there are any universal rules about that. Sometimes there's a low point in the middle. Sometimes the low point is at the end of the second act, the beginning of the third. Sometimes the low point is at the very, very end, right before they solve the problem. I don't think that there's an absolute structure to the second act. What there is a sense that the problem is getting more complex, or you're getting deeper into the reality of the problem. In other words, you can say, oh, I want to become rich. And so I'm going to go to the big city and get into the finance business. And then when you get there, you find it's competitive, and whatever type of person you are is discriminated against, and you find that the thing that you thought was like a valuable gem that you were going to sell in order to pay the rent turns out to have been a lie, because your uncle who gave it to you is actually a compulsive liar. those problems make it hard to get rich. Is that making sense? And then in doing that, you learn, oh, I was kind of a sucker for not knowing more about this life in the city, or I was kind of a sucker for believing my uncle, or I have never experienced this kind of discrimination because I lived in a place where everyone was like me, and now I'm in this place, and oh my gosh, they don't like me. How? That's wrong. And so you have to organize people like yourself to do it. There's so many steps, but they depend on what it's about. So the distinctive things that will make your second act interesting are going to be distinctive to you, to your story, and to this person. But the basic idea is always going to be, as far as I can tell, that you set out to get what you want. One, the character sets out to get what they want, and it is unexpectedly difficult, and everything you do to solve those unexpected difficulties either open up greater depths of difficulty or find out new difficulties. And if you have lots of characters, that's like Unforgiven. Unforgiven starts out pretty simply. This person hires an old gunman to avenge a crime, and he does it because he wants to become a gunman himself. So this young gunman hires this old gunman to, and I don't remember all the details honestly, but what I do remember is that there's a sheriff who's an obstacle, but there's also another hired gun who's coming, who's an obstacle, and there's this reporter who's writing about it, and all of these people become part of that very simple objective. Gunman's going to go and shoot somebody, but his partner turns out to be, his young employer partner person turns out to be a dope, naive, young, innocent. There's all these layers which make a simple quest to avenge a wrong for money grimmer and grimmer and more morally ambiguous than one thought at the beginning. Do you structure the inner arc, the inner change of the character? I absolutely do. I guess you could not, but I do. And furthermore, I would suggest you do. I would suggest one of the ways to do it is look at my video, Building Character Arcs, because that is where I talk a lot about that. Yes, absolutely. I believe that, in fact, look at that. We've got a page and a half of what I would consider pretty good draft. Like, there comes a point at which I get to where I'm like, this is where I could show it to someone. Like, this scene is now something I could show to someone. Are there things I'm going to tweak for forever? Yes. But this scene is now, to me, a first draft. It is actually the fifth or sixth draft, as you may know if you've been following along. But that's my goal now, is to get the entire script to where I could show it to someone, because that's the first draft. Okay, that was fun. We did good, don't you think? I am going to sign off now. And tomorrow I will not be here. Tomorrow I have a personal event. I got something to do. But I will be back Wednesday. So, see you on Wednesday. Until then, go write something.